Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So in this one, we're taking a look at decks for all pools for tonight's hot location, which is Onslaught Citadel. So this doubles up on all your ongoing effects in this lane. Very popular and very powerful location, and we're going to take a look at which cards make the best use out of it. Obviously, as you can see here, Iron Man going to be a pretty popular one tonight. Really good card with the location. We're starting off by running him in a pool 1 deck here, pool 1 Zoo. So a pretty standard Zoo deck, just a lot of very good cheap 1-drops to flood the board early on in the game, as well as provide some minimal disruption. Nightcrawler giving us some more flexibility, especially with our 2-drop here in Angela. Sentinel giving us ways to put stuff onto the board while still having more stuff to refill with. And then we get to our ongoing cards here. Mr. Fantastic, just very good at spreading the power around, and especially good if the Onslaught Citadel happens to go in the middle location. Then we have the things to buff up our team, which are mainly Khazar and Blue Marvel. And because of the location, we're adding Iron Man in here, as oftentimes just having Iron Man slam down in the lane will be enough to close out that lane. Then moving on to pool number 2 here, we have a few upgrades to our Iron Zoo deck. Basically, the main upgrades we are making here are a few powerful 1-drops, mainly Iceman for some additional disruption, and Sunspot, who is just generally good at filling out the points in our curve where we might not be spending all of our mana. Another card we are adding to the deck in pool 2 is Armor, mainly because Killmonger becomes prevalent starting in pool 2. You start seeing quite a bit of it, so this helps give us a bit of insurance that our important 1-drops will be staying alive. Other than that, the rest of the deck is pretty much the same. We're just leaning on going wide and then buffing up our board with Khazar, Blue Marvel, and Iron Man. Another good option we have access to in pool 2 is Devil Dinosaur. Probably the strongest pool 2 deck available, in my opinion. Just runs a lot of really good cards, and obviously Dino is going to be very good with this hot location. Now, we do also have a way to protect ourselves on the location, and I think that's going to be relevant because I foresee many Shang-Chi and Enchantresses running around to try and deal with the big threats that are going to be going down into the Citadel lanes. We also can get rid of it entirely if we're worried the opponent is going to leverage it more effectively than we are with things like Storm. We have some good early game in Agent 13 to keep our hand big and give us potentially another option. Iceman for some interaction, Armor for more protection, Sentinel, Lizard, and Angela is just really good 2-drops. Moon Girl enables us to get Double Dinosaur and is just a pretty decent tempo play. White Queen keeps the hand big while also being a solid tempo play that gives us information. And Chavez mainly for that early game draw consistency, but also sometimes we can just slam her on the final turn to close out the game. Moving on to pool 3 and above, we have the pool 3 upgrades to Devil Dinosaur here. Main upgrades we're making to this deck are Quinjet, who has very good synergy with our cards like Sentinel and White Queen, as well as the other new addition here in Agent Coulson. Coulson, I think, used to be very underrated, but the card has been performing very well in these Dino Shells. It's just a really solid card to tempo out that helps keep our hand size nice and large. We also end up going for Scarlet Witch for a bit more location control. Sunspot is really good in this deck since we are adding She-Hulk, who is a very powerful card. We're also adding Doom, who gives Storm a bit more benefit from the fact that we have another way to fight into the closed lane. Another direction you can go with the Dinosaur here is to add the Darkhawk package. Very similar style of deck as the Pool 3 version. It's just we have some upgrades here, and this obviously work very well with the hot location since we get more stuff that we can double up with the Citadel. So the main additions here, obviously Darkhawk, the enablers being Rockslide and Korg, Zabu so we can tempo out our 4-drops easier, and Mystique, who is often copying our Devil Dinosaur or our Darkhawk. You have the cards for this one. This is definitely the Devil Dinosaur deck that I think you should be playing. Speaking of upgrades, we're going to take a look at our final upgrade to the Iron Man Zoo build, and that is Zoo Thanos. So I've really enjoyed the Thanos Zoo decks. They're a lot of fun and make really good use of all the different powerful stones we have here to go along with the Mad Titan himself. The other cards we are adding to this deck, Bast is incredibly powerful, buffing up not only our stones but our other cheap drops. Especially good with things like the Hood. Not only are we getting a 1-cost demon, but sometimes we'll just get a 1-cost 3 power to go along with it, which is very, very good. Angela and Bishop both really appreciate the buff from Bast as well, and the fact that we're going to be playing a lot of different cards. Shang-Chi enables us to take down a big opposing threat to help swing the game. We continue to have Khazar, Blue Marvel, and Iron Man as the main ways to pump up our team, and Thanos mainly for the stones, but sometimes he's not too bad to slam himself on the final turn. Another deck that seems like a no-brainer for this location is Patriot. So Patriot obviously really appreciates this buff to its effect. A pretty standard Patriot list here. We just have pretty much almost all the no-text cards that we can run. Things like Misty Knight, Shocker, The Thing. We're actually running Mysterio as he gives us 2 no-text bodies and a 4 power body on top of that. Just have to be a little mindful of board space, especially when we are also going to be running Debris, not only to give rocks to ourselves that we can buff up, but to clog up the opponent's lanes. Then we actually are running some of the more high-costed no-text cards like The Thing and Abomination, so we can go pretty tall. Our other ongoing effect here is going to be Blue Marvel, so we're not totally all in Patriot plan. And we do have a way to back that up with Onslaught. I do think Onslaught has always been a really fun card to run in Patriot, and I think he becomes a bit more viable with this location. And then Ultron just as another way to close out the game. What if instead of leaning into the location, you want to do what you can to counter the opponents that are trying to do the same thing? Well, Sarah Server has got you covered for this one, mainly with our big piece of tech here in Rogue. You could also go a negative Surfer route with this deck if you want, but negative, though really fun, is often prone to being a bit less consistent than the normal versions of Surfer. But this is a lane control style of Surfer. We have Goose to lock down where opponents can play big cards. Then we use Storm and Juggernaut to make it even more difficult for the opponent to play things where they want to. Polaris gives us a little bit more flexibility in moving their stuff around more. Brood lets us fill up a lane immediately for a nice big Surfer buff. Fantastic helps get us power across the board and into closed lanes. Rogue for those pesky ongoing cards that we know are going to be very prominent for the next 24 hours. Killmonger just to deal with some good 1-drops. Maximus as a good post-Sarah play and sometimes just a decent tempo play, especially if you can bait the opponent into slamming a Dino just to steal it with Rogue. Sarah lets us play 3 3-drops on the final turn, and then just Lizard as another good utility 2-drop for the early game. And then last but not least, we have a classic Sarah deck as another way to try and counter opponents making use of this location. Obviously, Sarah herself does get a benefit from the location, which is nice, but the main thing here is we're actually running Enchantress, who can just totally shut down all the fun things your opponent is trying to do in the hot location. Other than that, it's a pretty standard list. We're a little more focused on 2-drops here, only having Bishop and Killmonger as our 3s. The main reason for this is we are trying to just have as many playable things as we can for cheap so we can make a nice big Hitmonkey. You don't need Hitmonkey to play this deck, but I do think he is a fun and powerful addition to it. Other than that, we have Zabu for a bit more consistency and cheapening our powerful tech cards in Shang-Chi and Enchantress. Scarlet Witch for some location control. Sentinel to flood the board. Classic Killmonger Nova to boost up the board. Mysterio for the Killmonger Nova stuff as well as the Bishop buffs. And Lizard just as a utility 2-drop. So those are all the decks we have for tonight's hot location Onslaught Citadel. As always, the decks will be linked in the description, so if you want to import any of the decks into the game, you can find them there. But that is going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.